Work from home revolution. People of the world, welcome to Send It Rising. Today we're talking about Facebook and whether or not they are liable for the death of Officer Underwood, who was killed by extremists from the Boogaloo movement. If you haven't heard of them, we're going to dive in. The sister of slain federal security officer is suing Facebook, according to ABCnews.com. David Patrick Underwood was fatally shot and his partner was wounded while guarding a federal building in Oakland on May 29th, 2020, when a large demonstration over the police killing of George Floyd was underway nearby. So this wrongful death lawsuit against Facebook, technically Facebook's parent company Meta, was filed on Thursday, and it seeks at least $25,000 in damages. We'll see just how far that goes. Quote, Facebook bears responsibility for the murder of my brother. This is from the sister. And so in today's episode, we're going to dive into the liability that tech companies have. We're going to talk a little bit about commuting and any potential liability that they could have forcing employees back into the office, but more so whether or not Facebook bears any responsibility for the death of folks who have been killed due to a coordinated communication assault through the channel of Facebook. So the Boogaloo movement, according to Wikipedia, to give you some context, is referred to as Boogaloo Boys, B-O-I-S or B-O-Y-S. It's a loosely organized far-right anti-government extremist movement in the United States. It's been described as a militia. They're pro-gun anti-government with the specific ideology of each group varying. At the end of the day, this particular ideology can flourish in places like Facebook. And so is Facebook liable for attacks on folks? We're going to see whether or not the courts think that they are. I'm reminded, of course, of my strong feelings that I have for companies forcing folks back into cars. They're saying, hey, employees, we need you back in the office. And so there's going to be some car accidents that happen. And will the companies be liable for that? As far as I'm aware, there is no precedent that says that Facebook is liable. They seem to be protected no matter what. But really, at the end of the day, if a jury decides in favor of the slain officer's sister, then we've got a new paradigm that social media companies are going to have to deal with. Now, if things do change, what that means is that Facebook, Google, Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, etc., are going to have to seriously censor their content. And so on the other side of this, if they're afraid of losing money through lawsuits because they are ultimately liable for what folks say on the platform, we're going to see a huge shift in regards to how these social media companies deal with moderating content. So that's on the other side of this. Quote, we believe and intend to show that Facebook's conduct has led to a rise in extremism throughout the world and acts of real-world violence, including the murder of Officer Underwood. This is from Ted Leopold. Quote, it is time that Facebook is finally held accountable for its actions. If you think about it, Facebook is definitely benefiting from our voices. There's no question about it. We are the ones putting in the work. We are posting on the platform. We are essentially unpaid employees of this company. And so it is interesting to me that this particular attorney is saying, look, we're working for Facebook by providing them content. What does Facebook really do for us at the end of the day? They simply provide us a space. And should they then be liable for what happens in that space? I'm reminded almost of having for example, my son's birthday is this weekend. We're going to go to a trampoline park. And all over the trampoline park, they say, you're responsible, jumper. You are. It's not us. And yet they are constantly sued. Now, the waiver has certain binding legal, ramifications, and there's things they do, but they understand that they do have a liability at the end of the day. And so Facebook has never had its feet held to the fire, as far as I am aware, in regards to something like this, where they are held criminally or are just financially liable for the actions of their users. After Underwood's killing, Facebook pledged to remove groups, accounts, and pages affiliated with the far-right group from its services, according to ABC News. But is that enough? Let's take a look at NPR.org. Sister of slain security officer sues Facebook over killing tied to Boogaloo movement. It was filed in California state court against Meta. And the movement, as we mentioned, is a collection of far-right extremists who claim to want to overthrow the U.S. government through a second civil war. Lawyers for Underwood Jacobs claim Facebook was negligent in designing a product to promote and engage its users in extremist content, despite knowing that it could lead to potential violence. Are they negligent? Well, if you can find enough evidence that says that they are profiting off of hate speech, which they clearly are, then I think there is an argument here. And culture shifts over time. Paradigms shift over time. And so what would be ridiculous 10 years ago may be very feasible today. Quote, Facebook Inc. knew or could have reasonably foreseen that one or more individuals would be likely to become radicalized upon joining Boogaloo-related groups on Facebook. So how could they move forward? This also reminds me of Trump's Truth Social Network and all the hot water that they could potentially get in regards to this sort of thing. At the end of the day, I am just sickened that we find ourselves in a humanity, in a culture where this sort of violence makes sense to someone. How they get there mentally is beyond me. I don't understand. I may never understand how folks can get into the headspace where killing another human being makes sense. According to the NPR.org article, social media companies largely escape legal responsibility in such cases thanks to a law known as Section 230, which prevents online platforms from being held liable for what users post. There have been rare exceptions in attempting to advance lawsuits against tech companies, like when an appeals court found that Snapchat could be sued for a feature that allegedly encouraged reckless driving. So, as I mentioned before, I was unaware of any particular case, but here we have one with Snapchat allegedly encouraging reckless driving, and there was a lawsuit that went forward there. Eric Goldman, a professor at Santa Clara University Law School, according to NPR.org, who studies Section 230, said Facebook will likely invoke the legal shield in this case, but he said the suit faces other hurdles because apparently there have been a number of lawsuits trying to establish Facebook as liable for violent groups on the platform. This is very, very, very interesting. It could change the way social media is censored moving forward. Lawsuits like this can be, think Roe versus Wade or other famous lawsuits. This could definitely be one of them. Apparently there are 1,000 private groups that have been banned on Facebook for militarized social movement related content. And they have acknowledged their role in militia-fueled violence in the past. Zuckerberg literally called it an operational mistake at one point. So, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think? Leave a comment. Let me know what you think about Facebook's role in these sorts of problems. YouTube.com/SendItRising. We're also on iTunes, Spotify, and pretty much any other podcast you could possibly imagine. For those of you that got it this far in the video, I love you. Thank you so much. Let me know that you're out there by leaving a comment, youtube.com/SendItRising. Thanks, everybody. Bye for now.